In today's session, we will see how to configure the entire enterprise structure and understand first the basic terms that are relevant for the enterprise structure, understand how the configuration is done and by whom it is done. So if you look at the entire enterprise structure, there are several people who would configure the enterprise structure. So there is the FI department, the finance department, who do certain configurations. The MM consultant will configure certain MM related and logistics related configurations. Then there's a sales consultant who will do the sales configurations. If a WM is available, then all the warehouse related configurations will either be done by the MM consultant or by the warehouse management consultant. Okay. So let us dive into the enterprise structure configuration. So this session's objective is to understand in entirety what all goes into the SAP Enterprise Structure Configuration. So if you look at the high level structure, okay, we have the client at the top level. The client is also known as company. And under the company, you can define the company codes. Now, company codes, if you see, a client can have one company code or can have multiple company codes. So depending on the business requirement, you can configure the system accordingly. Similarly, a company code can have multiple plants that are under one company code. Okay. And then for each plant, then you have different storage locations to store the materials. Like if you take the raw material, you store the raw materials in raw material storage location. You can have the raw materials also. You can have different kinds of storage location, like open yard storage location, cold storage location, and bin storage locations, high rack storage location, etc. So apart from the storage location for the raw material, you can have similarly storage locations for the semi-finished and the finished materials. Now, in the org structure, if you see, there are other departments that come into play. For example, if materials management, if you look at the procurement part, then the procurement is handled by a department, which we call that as a purchasing department. In SAP, we kind of configure it as a purchase organization, which is responsible for procurement of materials. In many cases, it may happen that you have one single purchase organization that you configure for the entire procurement, or you might have corporate level procurement, corporate purchase organization that handles all the corporate procurement or for all the companies put together to gain over the price, to get the best price for the material. Now, if you look at the local plants, they may have a small purchasing department that is kind of handles the local purchasing requirements. So any major materials that are procured across the plants will be dealt by the corporate and will be handled through a contract or through a proper negotiation through a schedule agreement. Okay. Whereas all the materials that are required on a day-to-day basis or any specific materials that can be handled by the purchase organization that are relevant to the plant. So depending on the business requirement of the client, you can go ahead and configure the entire enterprise structure configuration. Now let us quickly understand a few definitions, what each one of these are. If you look at the SAP Enterprise Structure, SAP Enterprise Structure is composed of number of organizational units which are related to one another. Say, for example, if you look at the FI structure or the MM structure or the SD structure, you have different organizational units. So you have a company, you have a company code, then you have plants, you have the purchase organization, you have sales and organization, you have distribution channels, you have divisions. So the entire enterprise structure consists of number of organizational units which are interrelated to each other. Okay. To establish this basic relationship, what we do is we first define the org units, and then we assign them and connect those different org units and build the relationship. Now, if you look at the client or company, that is the highest hierarchical level in the SAP system. So if you look at a company can have just a single company code, or it can have multiple company codes. Let us just take an example of Mercedes or Merck. So if you look at Merck, assume that we have a heavy commercial vehicle division which manufactures trucks as well as buses. So you can have one single company code, and under one single company code, you can have a couple of plants, where in one plant you can have the trucks being manufactured. In the other plant, you can have the buses being manufactured. Now, suppose Merck also has a different division or a different unit where the automobiles and SUVs are manufactured. Now, if these need to be configured, then you can have another company code for light commercial vehicles where you have the cars and the SUVs being manufactured. Maybe it's in the same country, it could be a different country altogether. So then what happens is you have one company code for light commercial vehicles, you have one company code for heavy commercial vehicles. So depending on the business requirement, you can configure the SAP system to replicate the structure that is required. Now, if you look at the company code, it is the organizational unit, which is generally created by the FI consultant. And basically, the company is a legal entity because it has a statutory requirement, and we need to maintain the balance sheet, profit and loss statement for this legal entity. Generally, a company code, when you say refer to a company code, it represents an independent company, and all the books of accounts are maintained at the company code level. So a client can have several company codes or a single company code. And if it has several company codes, then it kind of maintains separate set of financial books for each company code. Now, going to the next level, the plant. When you look at the plant, depending on the location or the manufacturing location, the plants get created, and you can have multiple plants being created for one single company code. So just as we discussed earlier, so you have the client at the top level, then you have the company codes. Then under the company code, you can one plant or multiple plants. Now, to meet the purchasing requirement, you can have a single purchase organization that can meet the requirement of the entire procurement activities, or you can have multiple purchase organizations to meet the procurement activities. So let us go and see how to configure the enterprise structure. Before we understand what needs to be done, let us understand what are the steps that are involved and what we are going to configure at a high level. So the first thing that we would be doing is define the organizational unit. Okay. And once we define the organizational unit, we configure it, we would go ahead and then assign these organizational unit to another organizational unit and create the relationship or the structure. So our focus here is majorly on area. Similarly, we have a FI consultant who would be configuring all the FI related structure, the SD person configuring the SD related structure. So if you look at the company and company code, usually they're configured by the financial consultant. But for us to understand, we will do the configuration and understand how to configure it. The other things that we need to configure are valuation areas, plants, division, storage locations, purchase organizations, then purchase groups. So let us take an example that we discussed a little while ago. Let us consider Mercedes company and assume that you're going to configure the company structure. So let's define the company Merck with as C000. Let's define the company code as C100. The plant, let's assume that the Merck is available or is planning to set up a plant in India and two different locations at Chennai and Bangalore. So you have plant P400 and plant P500. And for each of these plants, you have three different storage locations that are defined. RM10, SF10, and FG10. RM for raw material, SF for semi-finished, and FG for finished. Okay. Now, there is one purchase organization that is taking care of all the procurement-related activities. So we will go ahead and configure one purchase organization, PUR4. Let us also create a few purchase groups that are relevant for the organization. When you say purchase group, it refers to a buyer who is responsible for procurement of a certain category of material. When you say buyer, it is nothing but the purchaser in the purchasing department. Then we will configure the posting period. We'll also maintain the company code for the materials module, and we'll set up the plant parameters. So let us now log into SAP. So once you log into SAP, put in the transaction code SPRO, and then click on this SAP reference IMG, or click on the function key F5. So once you are into the configuration area, scroll down to the enterprise structure, click on this arrow, and then go to the definition section. So under the definition section, go to the financial accounting, and under financial accounting, go to define company code. So these are relevant steps that you can perform. Depending on your requirement, you can start configuring the relevant areas. So we will start with defining the company. So once you click on to the defined company, the system opens up a new window. Here you can enter the company. So before you enter any company or create anything, because this is an IDS version, just check that if your company is already existing. If it doesn't exist, good. If it is existing, then you might have to change your company number. Okay, there are two ways of doing the creation of company. You can either copy any of the existing company, go ahead and change the information, or you can create new entries. For us, let us go ahead and create new entries, because that way you're able to create everything unique. So enter C000, company name Merck. Then put in the street. Put in all the relevant details and enter the language as EN and the currency INR. Let's assume that now you're setting up the enterprise structure for Merck in India. So suppose if you have a long name for the company and you want to know by short name, then you can provide the shorter version or shorter name. For example, if you have a company like Tata Consulting Services and it is in short known as TCS, you can always put in Tata Consulting Services here and then put in TCS here. Okay. Once you enter the details, click on save. And when you save the request, always create a new request, and then you can go ahead and save this, giving the relevant description. Now let us save this as Mark Enterprise Structure Config. Okay, and then go ahead and save this. Okay, now we have created the company. Let us go to the next step. Edit, copy, and define the company code. Next step is to define the company code. Let's go here to the company code activity. Now you have the option to copy, delete, and the company code. If you want to copy from an existing company code, you can do that. But ideal recommendation is do not copy, because if you copy, the entire set of configurations and the relevant things would also get copied if you are not careful. So it is better to create everything from scratch. So let us go ahead and do an edit company code data. If you go to edit company code data, the system pulls in the window where you already have the data of the configured company codes. As I mentioned earlier, check if your company code is already existing. This being a IDS client. So it's not existing. So we can go ahead and create it as a new entry. Okay. New entry, put in the company code C100. Then company name, Merck LLP. Then city, Chennai, country, India, currency, INR, language, yen. And then you can click on the detailed address. And if you have the relevant corporate office phone numbers and all that, you can put them here. Okay. And then click on save. Okay. So now you can see this message, data has been saved. So the next step, we will just skip to the logistics general area first, and then go to define valuation level. See, valuation, when you say define valuation level, you need to define at which level will you evaluate the material. So when you want to evaluate the material, say for example, material A at different prices for different plants, then you would select valuation area at plant level. If you want to evaluate material A at the same price across the plants, then you will select valuation level at company code level. Generally, by standard, valuation area is done at plant level. Next, define copy check plant. So let's go and define plant. So go and check if your plant is already existing. If not, go ahead and define. So you go and create a new plant. We said P400. Name of the plant, work trucks. And then put in the country code. Selected India, so city code is not maintained. Factory calendar, you can create your own factory calendar or you can use the standard factory calendar. Okay, we'll just go ahead and configure the standard one. Next, when we configure our own factory calendar, we can go ahead and make the change here. Let's leave this. Now let's maintain the address of the plant. So out here, the region refers to the state. So put in the relevant state number. Click on save. Similarly, let us go and create the second plant, P500. So go and copy P400, and then you can make the relevant changes. There you can make buses. You can make change here. So enter your postal code, then change the region to Karnataka. Click on enter. To verify the detail again, just select P500 and click on the magnifying glass. Okay, and click on the address again. Once when you save it, the data gets changed. Now we've defined the plants. Next, we need to define the division. So let us go and define the division. So we already have a trucks division and a bus division. We can use this or create our own division. Okay. So let us go ahead and create our own division. So enter the division. You can see that after 31, there are no numbers. So you can go ahead and create 35. Trucks and 36 as buses. Click on enter. Go ahead and save. Suppose if you have only one division that is going to maintain or that you're going to use, then you can just use one division code. Okay. The next set of configuration or definitions will be in the materials management area and logistics general. So we just completed all these in the logistics general. So let's go to the materials management area. So if you go here, maintain storage location, maintain purchase organization. Let us go and maintain the storage location. So let's go and put in the plant P400 we just created. And once you put in the plant, you can create new storage locations, say new entries, RM10 and as RM. Then you can have SF10 for semi-finished storage. As we discussed earlier, in raw material itself, you can have multiple storage like open yard storage, then container storage, you can have high rack storage, you can have bin storage, or you can have cold storage. Depending on the requirement, you can configure it. So here for our understanding, we're just creating one storage location only. And you can maintain the address of the storage location if required. Generally in the configurations, you need to maintain the address of each and every storage location. Okay. And then you can put in the address. Now, similarly, you can maintain the address for all the storage locations. Okay. And once you're done, just save it and come out. Then let us go and maintain the storage location for the other plant. So go back to maintain storage location, P500, click on it. Then new entries, RM10. See here, you can use the same name as the previous storage location that you maintain. But since it is tied to the plant, you can have a unique address. You can have a unique location. The system identifies it uniquely because it is tied to the plant. And the plant has a different address altogether and completely different located in a different location. So go to SFG, storage, then finish good storage. So all these you're configuring and storing under the same transport request. And this is the request number. Okay. And if you see here, this is a customizing request you're storing under. Okay. And similarly, you can maintain the address of the different storage locations. So next step, maintain purchase organization. So maintain purchase organization, we have said in our configuration that we will configure it as PUR4. So let us go and check. So it is not available. So let's go and create. A purchase org for Merck. Or let us say PUR org for org Merck C100. So it is easy for us to identify. C100 is the company code. Click on enter and save. Completed the purchase organization configuration. Okay. Now, if you have a warehouse, then we will be defining the warehouse under the logistics execution. For now, we will just skip this and then move on to the assignment part. So far what we have done is under the enterprise structure, we have defined under different modules or under the different categories like finance area, controlling area, logistics general area, sales and distribution area, materials management area, logistics execution. And if plant maintenance is there, plant maintenance area, you need to define all the relevant org units. Once that is defined and completed, the next step, what you will be doing is the assignment. So that you're building the relationship for the and creating the structure that you want to to replicate the business requirements and then create the structure so that you can start posting the transactions and be able to generate the data. And when you post the transaction, the system would capture the relevant data against those relevant plants and then elevate it to the next level. So next step is to assign company code to company. Okay. So let us go here and do the assignment. So let us go in position and check for our company code C100. So we have that. And when you trying to assign the company, go and check whether it is available. So click on the drop down list box and then go and search for your company that you have defined. So what we have defined as a company is C30. So we have that company, Merck LLP, selected. So that way you are sure that whatever you have defined is correctly appearing here. Go ahead and save. So this is the first step for assignment. Go to the next step. Now assign company code. Okay, we have the other steps to go where we can assign the company code to credit control area and all that. So for now, we don't need to perform these steps. The FI consultant will do all these steps. Similarly, in the controlling area, the FI consultant or the CO consultant will do the relevant configuration. So let us go ahead and to the logistics general. The next step is assign plant to company code. So let's go and assign plant to company code. So let's go and search for our company code C100. So it is not there. So let us go and the plant that we define as P400. So now the system has pulled in the plant and the company name. Similarly, go ahead and assign C100 and P500. Go ahead and save this. So now what we have done is we assign the plant to the company code. The next step for the MM consultant would be to go to the materials management area. Okay. So go to the materials management, then assign purchase organization to company code. So we created the purchase organization PUR4. Go ahead and assign it to the company code. So PUR4, assign it to the company code. Our company code is C100. Okay. Our assignment is over. Now let us assign the purchase organization to the plant. So the next step is to assign the purchase organization to the plant. So double click on this and then select your purchase organization. So what we have defined is PUR4. So go to PUR4. And then click on enter. So if you see here, it is not available. So you can go and create a new entry. put in the purchase organization PUR4, then select the plant P400. Click on enter. Next one, PUR4 again, and you assign it to the second plant P500. Click on enter. Once you're done, click on save. So with this, we have assigned the purchase organization to the plant. Okay. The data has been saved. Now, let us move on to the other steps where we'll go ahead and create the purchase groups. So go down to Logistics General, Materials Manager, and before we create the purchase groups, let's go and maintain certain other things. We need to maintain this, maintain company codes for materials management. So go to Logistics General, Materials Master, Basic Settings, maintain company codes for materials management. So here you go and look for your company code. Now company code is C100. Since we have defined the company code, we need to go and maintain the current year and the period. So if you see here, let us go ahead and maintain the current year and the period is 8. Okay. If you take it from January to December, then the period would be 8. If you take it from April to March accounting, then the period would be different. So if it is April to March, then you have April as 1, May 2, June 3, July 4, and August 5. So in that case, it would be 5. So depending on how you're configuring it and what the client requires, you need to configure the year and the posting period also accordingly. Okay, click on enter. Let's do 5 and then see what happens. Yeah, it accepts. So let's leave it as 5, then we can go and validate it. Now you have a column here called ABP. If you want to allow the system to do any backdated posting, that is, assume that you're in the current period or August. Now, if you want to allow the system to post to the previous period, which is July, then you need to select this. If you do not want to allow it, leave this as blank. Let's go and check this. Okay. Click on enter once again, and then go ahead and save it. So this settings that we are seeing can also be done directly in this transaction code called OMSY. So you can go to the transaction code OMSY and do the set of configuration we just saw. Click on OK, and then go ahead and save it. Okay. So we have completed this configuration. This is an important configuration where you are setting the posting period for the company code in the MM area. So you have similarly a setting in the FI area too, which the FI consultant will take care of. Once this step is done, the next remaining 2 steps that you can complete are: 1, creation or defining the material group. The second is the creation of purchase group. Okay, so the materials are actually classified or grouped together. Okay, this may be useful for reporting purpose, or for any other purpose that you want to sort out, or you want to check how much you have spent for a particular material group, you can go and define your own material groups. Okay. So we'll just see how to create a material group. One example. So click on define material group and go and select here the groups. So let's go and check if there is a material group by name 1000 available. It's not there. So let's go and create a material group 1000. So new entry 1000. It's not there. So say general group, or we can just say steel. Then save. So this way you can create the different material groups that is required by the client based on the business requirement. Okay. Now, so once you have completed that, go to the materials management and go to purchasing. And here we can go and create the purchase groups. So select create purchasing groups. As we discussed earlier, purchasing groups are nothing but the buyers in an organization. So you can look at, check if P11 exists. Okay. We have P11, P17. So we can go ahead and create the remaining ones. So go to new entry, P12, and enter. P13, P14. You can put in your descriptions. Say this is a raw material buyer. So RM buyer. So this person is packaging, materials. And then you have the services. All miscellaneous items are handled by this buyer. Okay. So click on enter. Go ahead and save it. Okay. So with this, we have completed the SAP Enterprise Structure Configuration that is relevant for materials management module. There are several other configurations that need to be done for the materials management side. In an SAP implementation project, the enterprise structure configuration is a very big task and a very critical area. This is very, very important that you understand the current structure of the organization and map that structure correctly in SAP. So there are a lot of meetings that are held to make the client understand how SAP works and how the structure in SAP is, and then discuss with the relevant business folks, agree upon the new structure, and also understand the legal entity, the legal reports that need to be generated, the balance sheet that needs to be generated, profit and loss statement that needs to be generated, or any other statutory reporting purposes. And then the structure is arrived. Once the structure is documented, the structure is actually agreed upon and signed off by the client When you say a client, there are several people involved in it. There are senior folks on the client side, as well as the relevant business folks and the program manager, the project manager from the client side, and freeze on this org structure. This SAP Enterprise Structure is documented and signed off and then forms part of the blueprint. So before any other configuration is started, the first thing that is configured in SAP is the SAP Enterprise Structure.